Some moments divide your life into before and after. For me, that moment happened on an ordinary Tuesday night in November, sitting on a worn couch with my roommate Ethan, watching the rain blur the city lights outside our window. I didn't know then that everything I'd been hiding, every careful word, every measured glance, every feeling I'd buried deep, was about to surface. This is the story of how one quiet night became the beginning of everything. I'd been living with Ethan Miller for 8 months, and I'd been in love with him for 7 months and 29 days. Not that I was counting the apartment we shared in. Brooklyn was smaller 5th floor. Walk up with radiators that clanked like prisoners, rattling chains, and a bathroom where you had to jiggle the toilet handle just right. But it was ours, and somehow Ethan made even the peeling wallpaper seem charming. He'd hung string lights across the living room ceiling our first week there, saying every place needed a little magic. I'd laughed, but secretly, I loved them. I loved a lot of things about Ethan that I kept secret. At 26, Ethan was everything I wasn't. Where I was cautious, he was spontaneous. Where I built walls, he opened doors. He worked at an independent bookstore in Park Slope, and he'd come home smelling like coffee and old paper. His sandy brown hair perpetually disheveled. His green eyes bright with whatever story he'd discovered that day. He'd talk about books the way some people talk about falling in love breathlessly, reverently, like they'd changed his entire chemistry. I was a graphic designer, freelancing from our cramped second bedroom that doubled as my office. My world was structured, digital, controlled. His was chaotic, analog-free. We shouldn't have worked as roommates, but somehow we did. More than worked, we fit together like complementary colors, each making the other more vibrant. The problem was that Ethan thought we were just friends. Best friends? Maybe. The kind who knew each other's coffee orders and could communicate in half sentences. But friends, nonetheless. And I had become an expert at performing that friendship while my actual feelings writhed beneath the surface like something alive and desperate for air. I'd known I was gay since high school, but knowing something about yourself and living it openly are different countries entirely. I'd come out to my parents at 21, which had gone about as well as setting a bridge on fire and then realizing you needed to cross it. My father, a retired Marine with opinions carved in granite, had looked at me like I'd confessed to a crime. My mother had cried not the supportive kind of crying, but the grieving kind. Like I'd died and been replaced by someone she didn't recognize. "This isn't who you are," she'd said, her voice breaking. "You're confused, Michael. You're just going through something." I wasn't going through something. I was something. But after that night, I'd learned to compress myself into shapes that made others comfortable. I dated quietly, never bringing anyone home, never posting couple photos, never claiming space in the world as a gay man. I told myself it was easier this way. Less complicated. Then I met Ethan. And suddenly, nothing was easy anymore. We'd found each other through a Craigslist ad of all places. I'd been desperate to get out of my overpriced studio, and he'd needed a roommate after his previous one moved to Seattle. We'd met at a coffee shop in Williamsburg for the obligatory "make sure you're not a serial killer" interview. Ethan had arrived 10 minutes late, apologizing profusely, his messenger bag bursting with books. He'd ordered some elaborate drink with 3 modifications and insisted on buying me a refill when mine was empty. Within 20 minutes, we were laughing about our worst apartment horror stories. Within an hour, I knew I wanted to live with him. Within 3 hours of moving in together, I knew I was in trouble, because Ethan was comfortable in his skin in a way I'd never managed. He was openly queer, he used that word, reclaimed it with pride, and he moved through the world without apology. He held hands with dates in public. He wore a small rainbow pin on his messenger bag. He corrected people who assumed he was straight without making it confrontational. Just matter of fact. "Actually, I'm gay," as casual as mentioning he preferred tea to coffee. I admired him. I envied him. I wanted him with an intensity that sometimes made it hard to breathe, but I couldn't risk telling him. Our friendship was the best thing in my life, the first place I'd felt genuinely safe since childhood. Losing him would be like losing gravity. So I performed normalcy. I laughed at his terrible puns. I helped him hang shelves. I listened to him process his dates, offering advice while my stomach twisted into knots. I became very good at wanting someone while pretending I didn't. The Tuesday it all changed started like any other. I'd spent the day working on branding for a new organic restaurant, tweaking logos until they blurred together. Ethan had texted around 3. "Ethan, movie night. Thinking we ordered Thai and watched something terrible me? Terrible how? Terrible, or so bad it's good. Terrible Lethan, the finest cinema. Am talking Sharknado levels me? Sold. Usual from Thai Basil? Ethan, you know me so well it's frankly disturbing," smiled at my phone like an idiot. As I always did, by 7, we were set up in our usual positions, me on the left side of the couch, Ethan on the right, a carefully maintained distance between us. The Thai food was spread on the coffee table, and Ethan had queued up some disaster movie about a volcano in Los Angeles. But neither of us was really watching. The energy between us felt different that night. Charged somehow, like the air before a thunderstorm. Ethan seemed distracted, running his hand through his hair more than usual, a tell I'd learned meant he was anxious about something. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I was afraid of the answer. "Michael," he said suddenly, muting the TV mid-explosion, "can I ask you something?" My heart performed a gymnastics routine. "Sure," I said, aiming for casual and landing somewhere near strained. He turned to face me fully, drawing one leg up onto the couch. His expression was serious in a way that made my pulse quicken. "We've lived together for a while now. We're close, right?" "You'd say we're close?" "Of course," I said. "You're my best friend." Something flickered across his face. Disappointment. I couldn't read it. "Right, best friend. Yeah." He looked down at his hands. "So, as your best friend, I feel like I should be able to talk to you about anything." "You can," I said, and I meant it. The irony that I couldn't talk to him about everything wasn't lost on me. "Okay," he took a breath. "I've been seeing someone, kind of. It's complicated." The words hit me like a physical thing. Of course, he was seeing someone. Ethan was incredible, kind, funny, beautiful, in that effortless way that made people look twice. I'd known this would happen eventually. I'd prepared myself for it. Except I hadn't, not really, because no amount of preparation makes you ready to hear the person you love talk about loving someone else. "That's great," I heard myself say. My voice sounded normal. I was getting so good at lying. "Tell me about them," Ethan corrected quietly. "His name is David. We met at the bookstore a few weeks ago. He's a professor at NYU Literature. Smart, successful, age-appropriate." He said the last part with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Exactly the kind of guy I should be dating? Should be." I caught the phrasing. Ethan sighed, running both hands through his hair now. "He's perfect on paper, you know? He's attractive, accomplished, interesting. We have great conversations. He actually reads the books I recommend, which is frankly revolutionary in gay dating," but he trailed off, staring at the muted TV where Los Angeles was silently burning. "But," I prompted, hating myself for hoping there was a but. "But when I'm with him, I keep wishing I was somewhere else." He looked at me then, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. With someone else. The apartment was suddenly too quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat, the distant sound of sirens outside, the radiator starting its evening percussion solo. "Maybe you just need more time," I said, even though every cell in my body was screaming the opposite. "To get comfortable with him," maybe Ethan said, but he didn't sound convinced. He kept looking at me like he was waiting for something, like I was supposed to understand a language he was speaking that I couldn't quite hear. The moment stretched between us, fragile and full of possibility. I should say something, I thought. I should be brave for once in my life. But the words stayed trapped behind years of conditioning, behind my parents' disappointment, behind every time I'd made myself smaller to fit into someone else's comfort zone. "I should probably meet him," I said instead, which was absolutely the wrong thing to say. "Make sure he's good enough for you. That's what best friends do, right?" Ethan's expression shuddered. "Right," he said flatly. "Best friends." He unmuted the TV, and Los Angeles continued its destruction. The moment whatever it had been was gone. We finished the movie in near silence. When it ended, Ethan claimed exhaustion and disappeared into his room earlier than usual, closing the door with a gentleness that somehow felt worse than slamming it. I sat alone on the couch, surrounded by empty takeout containers and the weight of everything I hadn't said, and wondered how many times a person could choose safety over truth before they disappeared entirely. Outside, the rain started, soft at first, then building to a steady percussion against the windows. I watched the water blur the city lights into abstract shapes and thought about how appropriate it was that even the world outside was becoming unclear. I didn't know then that everything was about to change, that Ethan was in his room, staring at his ceiling, fighting the same battle I was, that we were both standing at the edge of something terrifying and necessary, about to either fall or fly. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living like this, close enough to touch him, but never closing the distance. Something had to give. I just didn't know it would be that night. I couldn't sleep. At 1:30 in the morning, I gave up trying and migrated to the living room with my laptop, thinking I'd get some work done. But I just sat there in the blue glow of the screen, the cursor blinking mockingly in an empty document, my mind replaying Ethan's words on an endless loop. When I'm with him, I keep wishing I was somewhere else. With someone else. Who did he mean? A different ex. Someone from the bookstore. It could be anyone. It probably was anyone but me, because I'd spent 8 months making absolutely sure he'd never see me as anything other than his safe, reliable, completely platonic roommate. I was drowning in my own thoughts when Ethan's door opened. He emerged in flannel pajama pants and a faded t-shirt from some 5K run, his hair sticking up in about 7 different directions. He stopped when he saw me, surprise flashing across his face. "Can't sleep either," he asked. "Too much on my mind," I admitted. He nodded slowly, then moved to the kitchen. I heard the kettle fill, the click of the stove igniting. A few minutes later, he returned with 2 mugs of chamomile tea, setting one in front of me before settling on the opposite end of the couch, that same careful distance. "Thanks," I said. We sat in silence, sipping tea, the only sound the occasional car passing on the wet street below. The string lights Ethan had hung cast everything in a warm amber glow, making the moment feel suspended somehow, separate from normal time. "I'm sorry," Ethan said finally. "About earlier, I shouldn't have dumped all that on you." "Don't apologize," I said. "That's what friends—" I caught myself, tired of that word suddenly. "That's what people who care about each other do. They listen. Do you ever feel like—" Ethan started, then stopped, staring into his mug like it held answers. "Like you're living your life at half volume? Like you're holding back the real you because you're afraid of what might happen if you turn the volume all the way up?" My throat tightened. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I feel like that all the time." He looked up, meeting my eyes. "You do? You seem surprised?" "I guess I am. You always seem so together, calm, like you've got everything figured out." I almost laughed. "That's called repression, Ethan. I'm not calm. I'm just really good at hiding." "Hiding what?" The question hung between us, dangerous and necessary. This was at the edge of the cliff. I could step back into safety, or I could jump. "How I feel," I heard myself say. "About a lot of things. About—" I took a breath. "About you." Ethan went very still. "About me?" My heart was trying to escape my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to backtrack, to laugh it off, to rebuild the walls. But I was so tired of walls, so tired of performing, so tired of wanting something I was too afraid to reach for. "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need you to let me get through it without interrupting. Because if you interrupt, I'll lose my nerve." He nodded, something like hope flickering in his expression, but I couldn't let myself believe it. "I'm gay," I started with, even though he probably knew. "I've known since I was 16, came out to my parents at 21, and it went terribly. They basically told me I was going through a phase, that I was confused, that this wasn't who I really was. And I know I held up a hand as he started to speak. I know they were wrong. Intellectually, I know that. But there's a difference between knowing something and feeling it, you know? And I've spent years making myself smaller, quieter, less visible, because that seemed easier than dealing with their disappointment. Easier than risking rejection? I paused, gathering courage. Ethan was watching me with such intensity that I had to look away. Then I met you, I continued, my voice rougher now. And you were so free, so comfortable with who you are. So brave in ways I've never managed to be. And I admired that. I was maybe a little jealous of it. But mostly I just forced myself to look at him. I fell in love with it. Pretty much immediately, words were out, irretrievable. Floating in the space between us like something physical, Ethan opened his mouth. But I kept going, needing to finish. I know you don't feel the same way. I know we're friends, and I've probably just made everything weird and complicated, and I'm sorry for that. But I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I couldn't sit here and listen to you talk about dating someone else and act like it didn't make me want to put my fist through a wall. Not because I think you owe me anything you don't, but because I owe myself honesty, finally. Even if it means losing what we have. I stopped, breathless, feeling like I'd just run a marathon. The silence that followed was immense. Ethan set his mug down carefully on the coffee table. Then he did something I didn't expect. He laughed. Not cruelly, but with something like wonder, shaking his head. "Michael," he said, his voice strange. "You absolute idiot." I blinked. "That's not exactly the response who do you think I was talking about earlier?" He interrupted, moving closer, closing some of that distance we'd always maintained. "When I said I kept wishing I was somewhere else? With someone else?" My brain short-circuited. "I what?" "You," he said, and the word was soft but definitive. "I was talking about you. I've been talking about you, thinking about you, trying to figure out how to tell you for months. David is a great guy, and I tried to feel something real with him. But every time we'd have dinner, I'd think about how you would have made me laugh harder. When he'd kiss me goodnight, I'd wonder what it would feel like if it were you instead. I've been falling for my roommate like some terrible cliché, and I didn't know how to tell you because I thought you were straight." "You thought I was straight?" The absurdity of it hit me. How could you possibly think I was straight? You never dated anyone? You never talked about guys. You'd get all tense whenever I mentioned LGBTQ stuff. I thought maybe you were uncomfortable with it, or just being supportive as an ally, or I don't know, Michael. I was too scared to ask. Too scared of making things weird if I was wrong. I wasn't tense because I was uncomfortable, I said. I was tense because I was desperately trying not to think about kissing you every time you existed near me. Every time I existed near you, Ethan repeated, and now he was smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "You're very distracting," I said defensively. "You do this thing where you bite your lower lip when you're concentrating, and it's frankly unfair. You do this thing where you push your glasses up your nose even when they don't need adjusting," I countered, moving closer still. "And you make this little sound when you drink coffee, like it's the best thing you've ever tasted. And you're thoughtful about everything, the way you remember how people take their drinks. It's the way you ask questions and actually listen to the answers. Do you know how rare that is?" We were close enough now that I could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, could smell his soap, and something underneath that was just essentially Ethan, so you. I struggled to form words. "You actually feel?" "Michael," he said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I am completely, overwhelmingly in love with you. I have been for so long that I can't remember what it felt like before. And I've been trying to move on because I thought that's what I had to do. But I don't want to move on. I don't want to be with David or anyone else. I just want to be with you." "Oh," I said, which was inadequate, but all I could manage. "Oh," Ethan laughed softly. "That's all you've got?" "I just confessed my love and you hit me with, oh. I'm processing," I said. "My brain hasn't caught up yet." "You love me?" "Yes, like romantically. Not just as a friend. Michael, I want to wake up next to you every morning and memorize all your bad habits and argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash and kiss you until we both forget our own names. Does that sound like just as a friend to you? No, I admitted. That sounds like everything. So can I, he asked, kiss you until we both forget our own names? Because I've been wanting to for approximately 7 months and 29 days, and if you don't let me soon, I might actually combust. I stared at him. You counted? I fell for you the day you helped Mrs. Chen from 3B carry her groceries up all 5 flights when the elevator was broken, he said. You didn't even know her. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped. I stood there watching you and thought, oh no, I'm in trouble. That was my first day here, I said wonderingly. I know. I've been doomed since the beginning. The moment hung between us, perfect and terrifying. All that was left was to close the final distance, to translate months of wanting into action. I'd spent so long being afraid of rejection, of disappointment, of losing what little I had. But looking at Ethan now, seeing my own feelings reflected back at me, I realized the scariest thing would be letting fear win again. Yes, I said. You can kiss me. Please kiss me before I wake up, and this turns out to be a dream. Ethan cupped my face in his hands, his touch gentle but sure. This is real, he said. I promise you, this is real. And then he kissed me. It wasn't like the movies. There were no fireworks, no swelling soundtrack. It was better than that. It was soft and tentative at first, both of us learning the shape of something new. Then deeper, more certain, as the tentative gave way to relief and hunger and months of compressed wanting finally released. His lips were warm and slightly chapped and tasted like chamomile tea. His hands moved from my face to my hair, and I pulled him closer, eliminating any remaining space between us. The kiss deepened, became urgent. Months of restraint dissolving into something fierce and honest. When we finally broke apart, breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against mine. I've imagined that about 1,000 times, he said, and none of my imaginations came close, same I admitted. Though in my imagination, I was slightly more smooth about it. You were plenty smooth. You told me you loved me. That's pretty smooth. I also called you out on your lip-biting thing, which was probably less smooth. I do that. He bit his lip, proving my point. Damn it, now I'm self-conscious. Oh, don't be. It's adorable. I kissed him again, briefer this time, marveling at the fact that I could, that this was allowed now, that he wanted it to. So, Ethan said, his smile turning mischievous, what do we do now? As people who are in love with each other and have finally admitted it, I have some ideas, I said. But they mostly involve more of that kissing thing. I feel like we have a lot of lost time to make up for. I like how you think. He kissed my jaw, my neck, making me shiver. Though we should probably also talk about practical things. Like whether I should break things off with David in person or over text. Definitely in person, I said. Be kind about it. I will be. He pulled back to look at me seriously. Thank you. For being brave enough to tell me? I don't think I could have done it first. I was too scared of losing you. We were both idiots, I said. The best kind of idiots, though. The kind who get a happy ending? Is this a happy ending? I asked. Or a happy beginning? Ethan grinned. Both. Definitely both. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the first hints of dawn were starting to lighten the sky. We stayed on the couch, wrapped around each other, talking in whispers about everything and nothing. About our fears and hopes. About what came next. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe fully. Like I'd been living underwater and had finally surfaced. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the living room windows and Ethan's arm around my waist. We'd fallen asleep on the couch at some point, talking until our voices grew hoarse and our words slurred with exhaustion. My neck ached from the awkward angle and my left leg had gone numb. But I'd never been more comfortable in my life. Ethan stirred, his eyes fluttering open. When he saw me, his whole face softened into a smile that made my chest ache in the best way. Hi, he said, his voice rough with sleep. Hi, I replied. This is real, right? Last night actually happened. I kissed him in answer's slow, sweet kiss that tasted like morning and possibility. Definitely real, Goody murmured against my lips. Because I had plans for today that involve a lot more of this. What kind of plans? The kind where we stay in our pajamas, order unnecessary amounts of breakfast food, make out on every piece of furniture in this apartment. You know, to christen them properly. I laughed. That's your plan? Unless you have a better one? No, yours is pretty solid, actually. We ordered from the diner down the street. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, hash browns, enough food for 4 people. When it arrived, we ate sitting cross-legged on the couch, stealing food from each other's plates, and it felt so natural that I wondered how I'd ever thought we were just friends. Everything was different now the way he looked at me. The casual touches that were no longer careful. The ease of being ourselves without performance. After breakfast, Ethan excused himself to make a phone call. I heard his muffled voice from his bedroom and knew he was talking to David. I felt a twinge of guilt for being the reason for someone's heartbreak. But mostly I felt grateful that Ethan was handling it with kindness. When he emerged 20 minutes later, he looked relieved. He took it well, Ethan said. Better than I expected, actually. I think he kinda knew. He said I talked about you too much. I'm sorry if that was hard, I said. Don't be. He deserves someone who's Olin, and that person isn't me. He sat beside me, taking my hand. I'm all in with you, though, completely, just so we're clear. We're clear, I said, squeezing his hand. I'm all in, too. The day unfolded in a series of small, perfect moments. We did christen the furniture, though less dramatically than Ethan had suggested. Just a lot of kissing and laughing, and learning each other in ways we hadn't been allowed to before. We watched movies without watching them, talked about everything we'd been holding back, made plans for dates that were actually dates now. Not friendship hangouts disguised as something else. At one point, Ethan pulled out his phone. I want to take a picture, he said. If that's okay? Just for us. I hesitated. Old instincts kicked in, the fear of being visible, of claiming space, of leaving evidence. But then I looked at Ethan's hopeful expression and thought about what he'd said the night before. About living at half volume. Okay, I said, but we're both in it. His smile could have powered the entire city. He held the phone up, angling it to capture us both. I leaned into him, and he kissed my temple just as he took the photo. When he showed it to me, I saw 2 people who looked genuinely happy and guarded and real and in love. Can I post it? He asked tentatively. I mean, only if you're comfortable. I don't want to pressure you. I studied the photo again. In it, I didn't see someone who looked scared or hidden. I saw someone who looked free. Yeah, I said. You can post it. Ethan's eyes widened. Really? You're sure? I'm sure. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of making myself smaller. I took a breath. I want to be visible. With you. Kiss me then, deep and thorough. And when we broke apart, typed out a caption. When your roommate becomes your whole world. #grateful. #new beginnings. Simple, perfect. True? He posted it. And within minutes, his phone started buzzing with likes and comments. I watched his face light up, reading the responses, friends celebrating, coworkers sending heart emojis, even his sister commenting finally. I've been waiting for this. Your sister knew? I asked. I may have mentioned you once or twice, he admitted sheepishly. Okay, constantly. She told me to just tell you already, but I was too chicken. My own phone buzzed. Text messages from numbers I hadn't heard from in months. High school friends I'd drifted away from. College roommates I'd lost touch with. All of them had seen Ethan's post. He had tagged me, were reaching out with congratulations and support. Then my phone rang. My mother. My stomach dropped. I need to take this, I told Ethan, my voice tight. He squeezed my hand. Want me to stay? Please, I answered, my heart pounding. Mom? Michael. Her voice was controlled, but I could hear the emotion underneath. I saw a photo online of you and another man. Here it was. The rejection I'd been bracing for since last night's confession, the disappointment I'd tried so hard to avoid. I'd been so focused on telling Ethan the truth that I hadn't thought about the wider consequences.
Mom, let me finish, she interrupted, not unkindly.
I saw that photo, and I sat with it for a long time. And I realized something. You looked happy, Michael. Really genuinely happy. I haven't seen you look like that in years. I couldn't speak. Tears were already forming. Your father and I, we didn't handle things well when you came out to us, she continued, her voice cracking slightly. We were scared. We worried about you having a harder life, about you being hurt, about things we couldn't control. And we let that fear make us say things that we shouldn't have. Things that hurt you. I've regretted that conversation every day since. Oh, Mom, I'm not done, she said, but gently. I need to say this while I have the courage. You are my son. You are kind and talented and thoughtful, and you deserve to be loved by someone who sees all of that. And if that person is a man, then that's who it is. I don't want you to hide anymore. I don't want you to think you can't share your life with us. I want to know about this person who makes you smile like that. If you'll tell me. I was crying openly now. Ethan had his arm around me, his own eyes bright with tears. His name is Ethan, I managed. He's my roommate, and I love him. Tell me about him, my mother said. I want to know everything. We talked for an hour. I told her about how we met, about the bookstore and the string lights and the terrible movies. I told her about last night, about finally finding the courage to be honest. She listened, really listened, asking questions and laughing at the right parts. I'd like to meet him, she said, finally. When you're ready. Your father would too, though he might need more time to figure out how to say that. You know how he is. I know, I said. Thank you, Mom, for calling. For everything. I love you, Michael. I should have led with that 5 years ago, and I should have said it every day since. I love you exactly as you are. When I hung up, I sat there stunned, trying to process what had just happened. Ethan rubbed circles on my back. That sounded like it went well, he said carefully. She wants to meet you, I said. My mom wants to meet you. And she said she loves me as I am. Michael, that's amazing.
I know.
I turned to him, laughing through tears. I'm terrified and relieved, and I think I'm in shock. Well, when you come out of shock, I want you to know that I'm very good with parents. I'm extremely charming and respectable. I'll wear a button-up shirt and everything. I kissed him, tasting salt from my own tears. I love you, I said. Thank you for being here, for being patient with me, for being you. Always, he promised. The rest of the day passed in a blur. More messages came in from old friends, from family members I'd assumed would never accept me, from people I'd lost along the way who wanted to reconnect. It wasn't all positives. There were a few disappointing responses. A couple of people who unfollowed or deleted their comments, but they were vastly outnumbered by the support. And for once, that felt like enough. That evening, we ordered pizza and sat on the fire escape, watching the sunset paint the Brooklyn sky in shades of orange and pink. The city hummed below us, car horns, distant music, the perpetual motion of millions of lives intersecting. Do you think it'll always feel this good? I asked, being open about us. Ethan considered. I think it'll get complicated sometimes. People will say things or will continue 759 amphis situations that are harder than we expect. But yeah, I think it'll feel good. Because we'll be facing it together as ourselves, not as some edited version. Together, I repeated, liking the sound of it. Together, he confirmed. For all the complicated, messy, beautiful parts, he sat in comfortable silence, his head on my shoulder, my hand in his. And I thought about the journey that had led her all the years of hiding, making myself smaller, of choosing safety over truth. I thought about my parents, about the work still ahead to rebuild those relationships. I thought about the person I'd been just 24 hours ago, terrified and closeted, and desperately in love with someone I thought I couldn't have. That person felt like a stranger now. Or maybe not a stranger, maybe just an earlier version of myself, doing the best he could with what he knew at the time. Hey, Ethan said, breaking the silence. What are you thinking about? How much can change in a day, I said. How one quiet night can become everything. Are you glad it did? Change, I mean? I looked at him, Matt his tousled hair and crooked smile at the way the fading light caught in his eyes. At this person who had somehow become my entire world? Yeah, I said. I'm glad. And I was, for the first time, in longer than I could remember, I was completely, unreservedly glad to be exactly who I was. Loving exactly who I loved, living at full volume instead of half. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the string lights inside our apartment flickered on, their warm glow spilling out onto the fire escape. Ethan's magic, I'd always thought. But maybe the real magic was this two people finding each other, finding themselves. Finding the courage to stop hiding. Maybe the real magic was just being seen and choosing to stay. Come on, Ethan said, standing and offering me his hand. Let's go inside. I want to show you something. What? A new book I bought. It's a collection of love poems. Very gay, very romantic, very us. I thought we could read it together. I took his hand, letting him pull me to my feet. That sounds perfect. We climbed back through the window, back into our apartment, our home, and I realized that this was just the beginning. There would be more conversations to have, more fears to face, more moments of doubt and uncertainty. But there would also be mornings waking up together, and late-night conversations, and terrible movies, and all the ordinary magic of building a life with someone you love. As Ethan curled up next to me on the couch, book in hand, I thought about the title he'd want for this story someday. A quiet night with my roommate that changed everything. It was perfect. Because that's exactly what it was. A quiet night that became a loud love. A whispered truth that became a shouted joy. A hidden heart that finally learned to be seen. Ready? Ethan asked, opening the book. I pulled him closer, breathed in the scent of him, and smiled. Ready, I said. And I was.